Today we're going to look at the RadPivotMap control. RadPivotMap is part of Telerik's RAD controls for Silverlight WPF control suite for .NET XAML development. So before we get started today, I'd like to answer the question RadTreeMap versus RadPivotMap. So RadTreeMap and RadPivotMap are simply data visualization controls used to display hierarchical data as a set of nested rectangles. So each rectangle has an area proportional to the specified dimensions on the data. So both controls are useful in scenarios where a lot of items have to be compared in a limited space. When the colors and size dimensions are correlated in some way with a tree structure, you can easily see patterns that would have been difficult to spot in other ways. So the RadTreeMap control, it can be bound to collections, hence the data has to be converted into a tree. The RadPivotMap, which we're going to look at today, can be bound to flat data, where the control automatically groups the data to be visualized. So one thing to note before we get started is that we have a RadTreeMap video that's coming up in the series, so you can feel free to check that out as well if you want to see how to use the RadTreeMap. So let's go ahead and let's jump into Visual Studio 2010 and take a look at the RadPivotMap control. So here we are, we're back inside of Visual Studio 2010 and we're going to create a new project that uses the RadPivotMap control. So let's begin. So we're going to go File, New, Project. We're going to select Silverlight, Rad Controls, Silverlight Application, and then I'm just going to give this the name of RadPivotMap Telerik TV and press OK. So we're going to host the Silverlight application in a website, and we're also going to be using Silverlight 5 since that seems to be what a lot of people are using nowadays. So after we press OK, we see the project configuration wizard. So the project configuration wizard helps you with adding references to your project. So you don't actually have to know how they all kind of correlate with one another. So for this control, for example, I know that in the Telerik.windows.controls.data visualization is where it contains. So if I place a check in this box here, then we can see that Telerik.windows.controls and Telerik.windows.data was added automatically for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit finish. Once I hit finish, if I look over in my Solutions Explorer, then I can see we have Telerik.windows.data, Telerik.windows.controls.data visualization, and Telerik.windows.controls have already been added to my project. I can also look in the XAML view here and look at our XML namespace, and it will automatically have Telerik that's been created for us. So in this sample, I thought it would be interesting to maybe look at some gross domestic product information. So we're going to go to our main page .xaml.cs and we're going to begin building this out here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a public class for GDP info. And now that that's in place, I'm going to add a string to add the continent. Just add our getter and setter here. And we'll add another string that adds in our country. And we're also going to need to store the state. So I'm going to add the state here. And then finally, we're going to add in the GDP. So we'll just do a public double GDP. And of course, we'll just add our getter and setter there as well. So the next thing we're going to need to do is actually create some fake dummy data. So I actually have a code snippet that I can add in where you don't have to see me typing too much today. So I'm going to just paste that in. So we have a public list, a generic list of GDP info with get data. So as you can see here, we have a new GDP info, and we have the country and the GDP. Now once that is in place, we are just simply returning the data. So I can come back up, and underneath my initialized component, I know I'm going to name this TreeMap when I add it in just a second to just TreeMap, so I'm just going to do TreeMap, and it's not going to find it right now. Item source, and that's going to be equal to this dot get data. So let's switch back over now to our main page.xaml, and let's begin. So we're going to begin with Telerik, and we're going to add in RadPivotMap. We're going to give it a name of just TreeMap, and we're going to look at the layout strategy, and we're going to add squarified, and then the value path, we're going to add that to GDP, and then the label path, we're going to add that to state. So the layout orientation is going to be chosen automatically by calculating the available space for the given data. We currently have two tiling algorithms to visualize the data. So we set this to squarified, but there's also another one called slice and dice, which is the default. And you can toggle these properties to see what that would look like. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add in some group definitions. So we'll go Telerik, and then we'll go RadPivotMap dot group definitions, and we'll just add in here Telerik group definition, and our member is going to be the country. We can close that tag out. So now that we have that last piece in place, we can go ahead and run this application. For the USA, for the GDP, we have California, Ohio, New York, and Alaska. Then of course you can see here with China, France, Brazil. You can always switch back over here, and you can go inside of the main page .xaml.cs, and you can look at the data. So we can see that for USA we had these 4 items, and here are those 4 items that are displayed. So if you want to actually see us adding colors to this, stay tuned for the next video where we're going to use a couple of different color converters to actually color code this information based on the data that it contains. So again, thank you for watching today, and please tune in to tv.telerik.com for more videos, and check out blogs.telerik.com for the latest news and announcements.